You have no idea how irritated I get when we try to do this. But because of you people out there and all of these wonderful stars that have been a part of our lives, I am able to handle, no, I can't handle this modern technology. So I have a producer by the name of David who does it for me. It is a pleasure, again, to have you with us. The response that we have gotten from Dionne Warwick, from, Frankie Valli, Frankie Avalon, Gary U.S. Bonds, Dee Dee Sharp, Bobby Rydell, my man Marsha from the Shy Lights, and of course, indeed, Smokey's wife, just tremendous. So with that being said, we're going to have another chat right now. I'm going to introduce you again to my dear friend that we spoke to last week, if you remember, with Stevie Van Zandt. Gary Anderson, otherwise known as Gary U.S. Bonds. Gary?
Hello there.
You're looking good, Gary.
You're not a bad-looking chap yourself.
Well, thank you, thank you. It's the wine. We will drink the wine before it's time.
And you look.
What's the hat you got on? Who was that hat?
I don't know. It's a NASA hat.
Oh, okay.
When I took off about 3 weeks ago down in Florida. Yeah, I went to I'm back now.
You're back.
Yeah.
Last week we spoke with Stevie and we were talking about the fact we love him because he's keeping our music alive by re-recording some of the great artists. And as you know, in the conversation, we spoke about a girl that we love. This lady has got the God-given talent, Gary. She never lost the pipes like you. I want to bring in Darlene Love, otherwise known as Darlene Wright. Darlene, are you there?
I'm here. Hey, guys. What's up, Gary?
I'm here.
Now, guess what, guys? I think we've got it connected. I think, hopefully, cross your fingers. We got a guy from the West Coast. You're upside down, Chris. Chris, there you go. Gary and Darlene. Hi, Chris Montez. Chris, are you there?
He's on the other side. I can't hear you.
Chris, are you there?
Well, we're having fun.
Listen, I don't know if he ever was there.
Yeah.
Chris, we're going to start.
Yeah.
Listen, Chris, if you can join us. But in the meantime, Garrett, we'll talk with Darlene. Darlene, last week, Stephen said some wonderful things about you. And Gary and I go back a long time. Your career has just been amazing. And I don't know if our audiences realize how important gospel was for you at the very beginning. Because your dad, was he a minister at the beginning?
Yes, he was a pastor. He had his own church.
Mm-hmm. This is where you learned the art, the soul of that magnificent voice?
Yeah, you know what? When they have a small church, you have 5 children. We're in the choir, Sunday school. We did it all. And early, I think that's what happened. People don't realize morning service on Sundays is like at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. And we had to sing full tilt when we sang, without microphones.
Absolutely. Look, that's what happened with Chris Montez. All we saw was him upside down without a microphone, but it just didn't work. Gary, let me ask you this question. Well, you're talking about gospel. I think all of the great soul singers came from gospel. Not only Sam Cooke, but all Lou Rawls, as you know, guys. And Lou, you backed some of the things, Darlene, with Lou Rawls, did you?
Yes.
Yeah. But how important was gospel, Gary, in your life?
Well, it was a little different because my father was a pastor. But when I started in church, everybody says I started in church. But my deal was, there was a church near me I knew the Reverend, and every Sunday he would give me $5 to sing a song.
You were good. We didn't get paid.
I did, and get the $5, and me and my buddies would leave there. And 2 blocks down the street was the liquor store.
Well, this explains to the audience how you developed such a wonderful taste at an early age for some good wine.
Oh, you better believe it, baby. My buddies would be out waiting in front of my house to take me to church.
And you didn't hear a word that the preacher was preaching or the minister was talking.
I have no idea what he was talking about.
And Darlene, you know, where do we really begin, Gary, when we talk about Darlene Love? I mean, you look at her life, and you look, and you know, her sister also was a star. They began together. Edna, right? Right, Darlene?
Yes, yes.
And then she became Honeycomb, right? And then, but Dar, your first real taste of show business, because you backed up everybody, especially in the documentary which you did, that shows you backing up everybody.
Right.
How did that? I'm sorry. How did that happen, Dar?
The guy who used to work actually worked for Gil Friesen. He worked for A&M Records, and we had worked with Lou and Herbie for years, long before anybody knew who they were. And we did all their background. They didn't have any money, so they said, "Girls, if we make it, we'll take care of you." I think we did our sessions for like $5 an hour. And of course, we were there all day and all night. I think that must have been going rate, Gary. $5.
Gary, did you get that any kind of money when you were working for Frank Guida and LeGrand?
And he got a percent.
Oh my goodness.
With $5, and he would take the 50 cents right away, right off the top.
Hey, Dar.
Yes.
The Blossoms, when you were with the Blossoms, and you know, you and I met when Jack Good called me, who was the producer of Shindig.
Right.
And I went out to the coast and I was watching the taping that you guys did, and the Righteous Brothers were doing backup on all of that. And at that time, is that when Phil Spector discovered you?
No, we had actually been with Phil Spector in 61 and 62. We didn't start doing Shindig until 65, 66.
Right.
65, 66.
Wait, then were you doing backup also for the Ronettes?
Yes.
You were doing backup.
Because Phil just brought Ronnie out, and he had already been using the Blossoms and myself. And when they got ready to do the background for the Ronettes, we just did it for. It's nothing that we ever talked about. It was a background job. You know what I'm saying? Because then later on, the Ronettes did come in and do all their own sessions.
Now, Gary, you know, Darlene basically was West Coast.
Yeah.
You guys are East Coast. I mean, your hits were in the 60s, going back, Not Me, New Orleans, Quarter to Three, Dear Lady, Twist. Darlene was doing backup for Spector, LA, East Coast. Did you ever meet Darlene when you were on your hype moving up in the early 60s?
I think I did. I really don't remember, you know, but I think we had a cross paths. Sure we did. But I was still, so I don't know.
We did neither. We did, well, you know, because we ran across so many people, you know, when we were doing Shindig.
Yeah.
Because that stopped me from doing a whole lot of traveling.
Right.
Because we did all of the in-house background for the television show.
And I did Shindig.
Yes. Yes. Right.
Now, listen, guys, I think we got Chris Montez on with us. Chris, are you there?
Ah, Chris.
Okay. I mean, for the audience out there, let me tell you how difficult this is. Chris is in LA, okay, 3 hours difference. And Darlene is on the East Coast, and Gary's on the East Coast. And apparently, even though you see Chris Montez, we're going to wave, Chris. Can you wave back, Chris? Chris. He's not going to wave. But I hope you can hear, Chris, that we're talking about you. Because Darlene mentioned Herb Alpert early on, right, Dar?
Oh,
Yes.
he's getting it.
He's getting there.
Yeah.
At any rate, Dar, Herb Alpert is the guy that really created the sound for Chris when Chris did all of those standards. The first song that Chris did was a song called Come On, Let's Dance. Come on, let's dance. It was on Monogram. So,
Right.
Chris, you're listening to me, hopefully. And then you hooked up with Herb Alpert. So, can you hear me, Chris? Okay. Well, we talked about a lot of good things about you, Chris. And Gary and Darlene, we love you. So, I hope you think we look good. Hey, Dar.
Yes.
You know what also hit my mind? This is something, Gary, you probably did not know. The biggest Christmas album, as you know, Phil Spector's Christmas album. Originally, am I correct, Darlene, that he wanted to do Ronnie Spector doing Baby Christmas Come Home?
No, I don't know where that came from, but that song was always supposed to be for me. We were actually recording, and Phil Spector called Ellie Greenwich and Jeff Berry in New York and told them he needed a Christmas song or original for the album.
Right.
We actually got the lyrics, song, and everything almost at one time, and then went in and recorded it. And I don't know where that kind of surfaced the last maybe 20 years, saying that the song was made for Ronnie, which is fine. I still did it, so it don't matter.
It's your, listen, it's your song. Do you think that Letterman, when did you do it originally? 86 on the Letterman show?
86.
Wow.
Because we were doing Leader of the Pack, remember, at the bottom
Yeah.
line.
Right.
And Paul Schaefer was playing Phil Spector. So he invited David down to see the show. And that next night on the David Letterman show, he fell so in love with that song. He said, we need to get that girl on the show. And from 86 until we went off the air, I did Christmas Baby Please Come Home every year.
Wow. Gary, you know, that's a long run.
Yes,
bless.
anybody.
For one song.
One song.
Hey, Dar, another interesting thing, Gary, which is what happened with Spector. Tell Gary, and probably Gary knows the story. As you know, the Crystals, their first song, There's No Other Like My Baby. Okay,
Yeah.
that was the first one. And at that time, Dar, Phil was in partners with Lester Still.
Yes.
You remember that, okay? And there was a Philadelphia connection because he also needed seed money from a guy by the name Harold Lipsius and
Yep.
Harry Finfer at
Yep.
the very, very beginning. And for the people out there, the label Phillies is Phil and Lester Still. Okay?
Right.
So the Crystals' first song, There's No Other Like My Baby, which originally was supposed to be the B side. The A side was Oh Yeah, Maybe Baby,
Right.
which was not the song. Now he's on the West Coast, and Darlene, tell Gary the story about when Pitney wrote He's a Rebel, how that happened. Go ahead.
Well, we were in the studio. I hadn't met Phil yet. And Lester Seal, I already knew. I hadn't met Phil yet. And he said his partner's coming into town, and he wants to record this record. Linda Carr had already recorded He's a Rebel. But Phil came to California. I met him. He taught me the song along with the Blossoms. We went into the studio, and within a week, the song was recorded and released before Snuff Garrett could let the Linda get hers out, which he was really mad because it was out at least 3 or 4 weeks before he could release his. So I was always up to chart. Beware when you let folks see and hear your song. Just beware. Like a little devil sneaking around, right?
Well, we don't
That
have
was
to.
the beginning of my career with Phil Spector.
No, we
Listen.
don't have to worry about Chris Montez listening to your song.
But Gary, you know the real kicker on this thing was that when the Crystals at the beginning did the TV shows, it was Lala wasn't singing, even though they were doing the TV show. It was Darlene's record, right?
Yeah, right.
And you know what? Nobody really knew that until 20 Feet from Stardom came out.
Yeah.
And they had her out there singing it, knowing it was me. I think that was the slap. I think that's what really rubbed her the wrong way. But I said, don't get mad at me.
No, get mad at Phil Spector like everybody else.
Join the club.
Gary, you know, we talk about producers. I mean, you know, and you talk about music. And when we spoke with Dionne Warwick, we talked about the real important thing are the writers, the lyricists. Of course, the composers, the arrangers are great. But when you think about the great writers that came from the Brill Building back then, with Donnie Kirsch, and when you talk about Carole King and Jerry, and you talk about Ellie, and you talk about all those wonderful writers, your songs, Gary, were songs that you yourself had written back then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we didn't write it down in Norfolk.
Well, do you
We
think
didn't
that?
real bill. We just had my house and the liquor store.
Well, but the biggest hit that you had is the song that Stevie recorded and who wrote it.
Oh, Bruce.
Bruce wrote it.
Springsteen,
So,
yeah.
you know, so let's see if Chris, are you there?
I think he's just watching us.
Okay. Well, Chris, hope this is going to be enlightening for you because I really wanted you to be.
I think I can hear us now, but we can't hear him.
I think it's not. I think it's a picture of Chris. I think it's a big picture.
Can you hear us, Chris?
Shake your head if you can hear us.
Shake your
Oh,
head.
you can hear
You
us.
could hear us.
Yeah.
You
I
sure
think
ain't a
that's it.
puppet.
I think you can hear us.
But Chris, even though you can't talk back, I got to tell you, we love the stuff that you did. And Gary, I don't know, Dar, if you were on the show when we did the Kimmel Center together when we had Chris.
Yes.
And we had a 40-piece orchestra, which is amazing. And the songs, we talked about songwriters. Harry Warren, man, The More I See You, the more I mean, these guys were going back to the 30s and 40s. And that's another interesting thing, how our music changed. Because Chris was not really a rock and roll singer. And when you hooked up with Herb Alpert, as I said, and Jerry Moss, it changed your career. And here's something, Gary and Dar, I don't know if you know this, but do you know that the Beatles opened up for Chris Montez when he was in England? Did you hear that? Yep. Now, I just paid you a compliment, Chris, even though you can't hear me. Okay? You can hear me, but you can't open your mouth? Oh. Talk Spanish. Ma ok. Parla in Italian. Ma come si fa? Tutte buone che stasera. Nothing. Okay. Anyway, Dora and Gary.
You know, one of my greatest joys was coming when I did come to New York and got to meet a lot of the entertainers because we didn't know one another because nobody was coming to the West Coast during that time. Is to meet Gary. You know, somebody that could really sing, a singer. Nobody that was in the studio, they were helping and trying to make them sing. Gary was a singer. And then to be able to meet the guy who recorded the song, that Bruce Springsteen wrote for him. Listen, I knew Gary before I knew Bruce.
Yeah. Listen, there are very few cat stars today that you can really say began back in the 50s and early 60s and had hits. I mean, most of our brethren are gone. I mean,
They're not here anymore. That's right.
No.
Yeah.
Gary, what do you think about all that when you look back at our business?
Yeah, you look at it now, Chris is gone.
Man.
He's not here anymore.
But he's still alive
He's still alive.
somewhere.
It is sad. I mean, when you think about all the, and a lot of those guys, I was on the road with those guys, like Sam Cooke, B.B. King, Don, Benny
Lou
King.
Rawls.
Yeah, Lou Rawls. I mean, these are the guys that I was out hanging on the bus with. And it's only me and Darlene.
And you know what's so sad about that whole thing? That people today are not going to know who those guys are.
No, not at all.
I mean, they were some giants. They had some giant ears, and they were great about it. They loved what they did.
That's why,
Kind of
guys.
bad and sad that nobody's going to remember them now. Not today, anyway.
Yeah, the only thing they knew about Sam Cooke guys was the boy, Paul Odom or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
That's who they think Sam Cooke is now.
Right. Hello? And they're probably going, who is Sam Cooke?
Yeah, right.
Our dear friend who I love was Lou Rawls.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about a kind, gentle guy. You would listen to Lou Rawls, the way he sang with that. It's exactly who he was.
Yeah. Gospel.
Yeah, again, going back to gospel.
Right.
He was managed, if you remember, Gary, this, his manager was Alexander, C.L. Alexander, who also managed Sam Cooke and Bobby Womack, man, and all of those cats back then.
Right.
Dar, you said something which is interesting to me yesterday when we were on the phone. Gary, I want you to hear this. Darlene said to me, I have a new manager. I got to tell you, back in the day, Dar, the artist never really had proper management.
Right.
Because if they did, they would have negotiated, Gary, as you know, with the record company. Back then, the record company designated what you were going to get.
Right.
And they took out everything from your royalty, so you got no royalty. And Gary, the only way we made money is when you worked.
That's
The
right.
record, right. In other words, the record was the stepping stone for you to be working. But with the new manager, and I got to tell you something about Sinatra. And I go back, Frank never really had a manager, Darlene.
Oh, wow.
He would call the shots. He had people representing him like Jerry Weintraub or Mickey Rudin. But which brings the point to the audience that if an artist like Darlene Love and Gary Bonds knows where they want to go, and if they call the shots on their career today, it's much faster than it was back then. Do you agree, Gary?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I couldn't call the shot, and I had Frank Guida.
No Guido.
Darlene.
Anyway, and who was also my manager.
Okay, hold on, guys. Hold up. The producer, say this again.
See if Chris can hear you. He should be.
Chris, can you hear us, Chris?
I can hear you.
Well, now we can't see him, but we can hear him.
You can
That's
hear
okay.
it? You see
I can
us?
hear you.
Okay. But
You
you
never look better, Chris.
He's only on the phone.
Oh, I can
Okay.
see you, but I can
good.
hear you.
Okay. You're only on the phone, which is okay. We
Yeah.
were just talking about managers and things of that nature
Yes.
when
Right.
you got back to us. And I'll be with you in a second. I don't want to lose my trend of thought. Gary
No.
and Darlene. Darlene first. Would you do anything differently today if you knew back then what it is about today, the industry?
You know, I would. We put too much trust back in those days, and we didn't even let them do it. They know what they're doing. We didn't know whether they knew it or not, but we said, "Yeah, let me let him do this." And even though I found out years ago it was illegal for your record company to manage you.
Yeah.
That's all
Yeah.
Phil Spector did. He managed all of us.
That's right.
And he took
He got
money from
drinks
everybody.
for us. He took pictures, promotional pictures. He did all of that. So therefore, guess what? All of that came out of our royalties.
Yeah. And
Before Phil got his.
I used my manager's lawyer to handle me.
Yes, yes. I
And who
think
was
we would have
also,
did something. Of course, we would have did something different, but a
you
lot of
didn't
times
know.
we didn't even know the business
know.
good enough. I came straight out of church into this business, and I didn't know anybody that knew anything about this business. It was like, lucky, oh, this is good. Oh, good, this is another stepping stone. So we had a
yeah,
long way to go. So
Let me
today is different because everybody's handling their own business.
there's the answer. At this point, from the point one where you began to where you are now, you've learned and you know from all the ups and the downs, and that's it. It's called seasoning, Gary.
Oh, yeah,
Seasoning.
seasoned, all right.
That's it. Like a fine wine, Gary. You got to
Yes.
make sure it's in the
did not
coke.
obey either.
Now, Chris, you're watching us, and we're going to. I'm going to ask you this question, Chris.
Yeah,
We can't.
go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Chris,
Yeah.
when you first began, because you and I spoke about this before, your idol
Yes.
was Richie Valens, who basically was
Yes,
the
he was
first. Go ahead.
Mexican rock and roller that inspired me. Yeah.
How old?
When I met Richie, Richie was 18. I met him at Hop, and then he died later that year. But I was a sophomore in high school.
Well, your first record, I had said, and Darlene and I and Gary were talking about Let's Dance on Monogram. How did you hook up with Herb Alpert?
Well, I hooked up with Monogram because this guy became my producer, and we wrote a lot of songs on the Let's Dance album. But like I had no representation, I made my first mistake, and I trusted him, and I ended up walking away because he couldn't. He was taking all the royalties, my money, and so I decided I'm leaving. So I had to sign off because he wouldn't let me go. And then I decided to go to college and study music. And make a long story short, I ran across this friend of mine who was a saxophone player, and he said, "Hey, I want to go pick up some tapes." And I said, he was a good friend of mine. He said, "Come with me." I said, "No," but I went with him anyway. And this guy comes out and says, his name was Bob Tate. He says, I can't use your music, but thank you, Bob. And out of Bob's mouth, he said, "Oh, this is Chris Montez." And that person said, "You're Chris Montez, a singer?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "What are you doing right now?" I said, "I'm going to school." And he said, "I sure would like to have you for my label." And I said, "No, I'm not interested." and it was Herb Alpert.
Yeah.
And then I came back a few months later, and we signed. And I did my routine of rock and roll with a staff producer, and then all of a sudden he said, "Herb doesn't like what we've done." So I said, "This is the reason why I didn't want to get into it again." But he said he wants you to come in his office. He wants to talk to you. He's got an idea. So I walk in, and Herb Alpert's a real cool dude. He's a real cool dude. And he said, "Hey, Chris, I got an idea." And he starts clapping his fingers, and he starts singing, "If you're feeling sad and lonely," and I said to myself, "I can't sing that stuff. That's Sinatra and all that stuff. I can't." But he guided me, and he was standing next to me when I was recording, and he said, "Let's try another one." And the second one was a right cut, and he said, "That's it."
Well, you know, Chris, and Darlene and Gary, you know, Petula Clark had the original version of "Call Me, Don't Be Afraid, and Just Call Me." It was written by Tony Hatch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but your version was more of it really had a Latin feel. And even Chris, with the things that you did, the more I see you, the more
Yes.
that was a whole different Latin feel, which really was very interesting. And I think Herb, as you said, developed that in his mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Nick DiCaro, who was my arranger, and Tommy LaPuma was my producer.
Well, you know Tommy, Gary, and Darlene, you know Tommy LaPuma
Oh,
very
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
You know, Gary and Darlene, you know what's very interesting? It just hit my head, and some of the audience out there have been asking questions, which I don't know. We'll do this again. We don't get time to do it today. But the West Coast sound, Darlene, and Gary, you understand it, was completely different than the East Coast sound. I mean, East Coast with Atlantic Records and Rama and G and George Golder was more rhythm and blues and rock and roll Atlantic. The West Coast with the Fifth Dimension, Marilyn McCoo, and you go with Chris Montez, and the Mamas and the Papas, and you know with guys like
And the Beach Boys.
Exactly.
And the Beach Boys.
It was a whole different feel back then.
Oh yeah.
You know, how did, well, you know, you think radio was the thing that really played the important part of the success. And then along comes a guy by the name of Dick Clark and
Yes.
has a national show.
Yeah.
And you guys are on it. And you, Darlene, because of Shindig, which was as big as Bandstand, if not bigger, became the Blossoms, Darlene Love. And look at you today. I mean, where do young people go today to break in and learn the business as we spoke about that you guys know? Where do they go today?
Well, you know what? When people ask me that, I'm almost at a loss to tell them where to go because they don't have what we all had when we were coming along. Even though we say we should have took care of our own business, those people did get us in the business.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and we learned, you know, because here we are 50 some odd years later, still in the business and doing well.
You know what, Gary?
I don't know where they go today.
You know what Gary said to me when we spoke, I guess, several weeks back. He said, you learn by watching other artists on stage.
Yes.
You learn from watching their moves, and you took a little bit of your act and incorporated it into what they were doing. You see?
Well, back in the day, those other acts would actually sit down and teach you.
Yes.
They would talk to you and say, you know, I think you should do this. And when you're learning from the guys that you admire and the girls that you admire, and that's even better. That's better than a regular teacher.
Yes.
You
Just
know?
think now they have somebody that, you know, they have all these places where you can go learn how to do harmony, learn how to read music, learn all of that. And we just fell into it.
Well, you
I
know-
never went to school to learn how to read music, but I read it today. That's only because of, you had to have an ear back then to learn harmony. You know what I mean?
And most of the artists, you don't need to learn. How much music can you learn when you talk?
You know, so guys, you know, it's something to be said about all the learning you did with the one-nighters and the shows and doing the buses and getting off the bus because you learned your craft. Darlene, was there anyone that really impressed you, said, man, you know, this is where I want to be?
Do you know, I learned so much when I worked for Dionne Warwick. I worked as a backup singer with the Blossoms, along with Dee Dee, her sister, and
And
Sissy.
Whitney? Yeah.
I learned more from Dionne in that 10 years. I learned, someone said, if you're going to steal something or take something from the artist, take the best part of them.
Yeah.
Everybody has their faults and whatever, but take the best. And I learned from her everything about her because she was a student of the music. She had a master's degree in music.
Listen,
So-
she again comes from gospel. She came from your gospel world. You
Yes.
know, when her and Sissy and when they were doing gospel, Gary, was there anybody that influenced you when you saw that said, yeah, man, this is where I want to go, where this cat's at?
Well, I tell you, again, I go back to being on the bus. And the biggest lesson I ever got, this was my first week out, and I was on a show out of Howard Theater in Washington. And on the show was Sam Cooke and B.B. King. When we left the Howard and we had to go to the Regal, and then we had to go to
Chicago, the Regal.
I rode in the car with them. They took me in the car with them because they didn't ride the bus. These were the stars. They had their I got in the Cadillac with them, and on the ride to every one of those gigs, they would tell me and show me what I should do on stage. And that's who I learned from, those guys. That's that. Jackie Wilson was another one that sat
Oh,
down.
yeah.
You know?
Chris, you know, because you did the one night is when you were in England, and I had said it, I don't know if you saw or heard at that time, but the Beatles were an opening act for you. What year was that?
That was 63. And when I first met them, everybody, all the different groups were trying to look like them. And I thought nothing of because we talk about people we learned from. And I just got through doing a big tour with Sam Cooke. It was my second tour with him. Just me and the Drifters and Sam Cooke and the whole entourage. So I learned watching Sam Cooke sing to the girls. And that's where I got my niche to sing to the girls. And when the Beatles came out and I started singing, I said, wow, this group can rock. Because I thought I could rock because I had all this experience already going through. But they knocked me out and we became good friends. Paul and John hung out. I hung out mostly with them.
Do you know, Gary knows this? Darlene, do you know, and Gary knows it, I never played the Beatles. Swear, Gary can.
Really?
Because it was bubble gum at the beginning. She loves
Yes.
you, yeah. I want to hold your hand. So what kind of stuff is this? You know, I mean, we were rhythm and blues and rock and roll and Darlene Love and Gary U.S. Bonds and the Drifters, man, and the Spaniels and the Dells.
The whole truth.
But Gary, he liked them. Chris
Oh,
liked
yeah.
them. He liked the Beatles.
That was the whole Beach Boy, all of it, that was that kind of music.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it was.
Let me tell you what they did do, though, Dar and Gary and Chris. They absolutely changed the culture of radio because radio format only played 40 records. Everything became English. Hermits, the Beatles, the Dave Clark Five. So all of the wonderful American artists who had one hit or two hits couldn't get radio play. And many of the wonderful artists just didn't get to play back then.
No, as soon as the Beatles came out, that's when I started the Holiday Inn.
I said thank God for Shindig because that was during the time that the Beatles came along.
Exactly.
So I had a career because of the television show.
Yeah.
But if I was probably had a record out during that time, because even Phil Spector faded when the Beatles came out, because he went to Europe after that.
Listen, that's what happened with Tommy Hunt. Gary, he went over to England and is still in England because you couldn't get Tommy Hunt, you know, because you couldn't get your records played back then. You know that our music is bigger in Europe and in England right now than in America.
Yes,
Gary.
definitely.
Well, you know that they call it Northern Soul, Gary.
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
I remember Edward Starr
Oh yeah.
with Roy and them. I remember working the Condor in Canada. And the next week was Edward Starr was coming. And I was meeting him that day. We had lunch together. And he sat there, he said, man, I got to get out of that. Well, where you going? He says, oh, I'm going to Europe. That's all. I didn't make no money. And he had a couple of big.
Hey, SOS, come on, man.
Huge success.
Yeah. Agent
You know
007.
who else? You know who else got really, really big in Europe? Me and Mrs. Jones.
Billy
Oh,
Paul.
yeah.
Billy Paul told me when I first met him, he said, "You need to move to Europe."
Yeah.
What? Do you
His career is so big in Europe, it wasn't even funny.
do you
Exactly.
know who the biggest star in Brazil is? Dionne Warwick.
Hello.
When Dion goes to Brazil, she is treated as royalty, man.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, so the appreciation. I shake my head sometimes because I want young people to be able who have talent like you guys had, to be able to have that talent exposed. You know, the problem today in this modern technology, they're not learning their craft.
No.
They're being prefabricated.
Yep.
And you take Lady Gaga or Beyonce, you have some great talents with great pipes and great voices. You
Right.
know, it's. What do you think about that, Chris?
I think it's wonderful. I mean, I agree with all you're saying.
I'm sorry, did we lose you?
No, I can.
I can't see you, but I can hear you.
He fell
I
on
can hear
the.
you, brother.
Do you hear what he said, Dar?
No.
Carrie, did you hear what he said?
As he was falling, or what?
I'm up now. I'm up.
He's back.
Hey, Chris, when you going to come back to the East Coast where I could see you?
Soon, I hope, when the gigs start happening again, you know.
All right, because the last time we did it at the Kimmel Center. And Darlene, you are the major star of the Kimmel Center. You did more shows at the Kimmel Center with Gary than anybody.
Yes,
And
I love that.
and-
Every year, I knew where I was going in January.
Yes, that was your line. You know, but isn't it marvelous, though, that you can take an artist like you, an artist like Gary, and all the artists and back them up with a 40-piece orchestra? You never had
Unbelievable.
that.
You know what? We would love to do that. Who can afford it?
Yeah, only the
Music is when we sing to music and not just our rhythm section. I mean, it just gives us glory.
Yeah.
Right, Gary? Just hearing all of that.
And this year I'll sing with a radio. I don't care. just do something this year, be fine with me. I get a megaphone. Give it to me.
Well, let me tell you what I do. I open up the refrigerator, and when the light comes on, I start to dance. I'm moving and grooving. If not, I'm going to go boop.
Hello.
Listen, how much time we got?
Thank God.
Hold on.
15 minutes.
Okay, we got 15 minutes. I want to recap the careers real quick for the audience out there. Darlene Love begins gospel. From gospel, singing with her sister, doing backup. Phil Spector, Blossoms. But more important, Dar, you also were in movies at that time. Tell me about that.
And you know, I was working at the Bottom Line in New York,
Yeah.
and this casting director for the Lethal Weapon movies was a fan and asked me if I would like to be in a movie with Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. And of course I said, yeah. You know, people come up and say, thank you. Sure, right.
Yeah.
Who knew we were going to do 4? And those are still some of the biggest movies they play on TV.
Yeah.
But I know exactly where I'm going to be, so I'll turn it on and I'll watch and turn it off.
But listen, you also did Broadway too.
And I loved it. But you know, when people do Broadway, that is no lie. It's the hardest job on the planet. And I figured it out because you do 8 shows a week, every week, every month, every year. Only difference is you're coming to the same place every day. And it was so hard for me later, like after about 2.5 years, I said, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to leave. I've had enough. Because they wait for you to say when you're tired. Because they don't want to fire you, especially if you're good and you can play. And you know what, Gary? And I have to say that about us. The entertainers today don't have that thing that we had. We go to work. If we got a job, we're gonna go and do the job. These
Yeah.
kids stop, oh no, I'm too tired, I'm not going to work today. Find any excuse in the world they can find not to go,
Yeah.
but we're gonna go to work.
Well, you
Yeah.
see, you never took it for granted. And
No,
you talk about Broadway, there are no microphones you're singing to. You got
right,
those mics overhead, so you got to use your pipes, and you got
yes,
to use. I mean, you got to know what you're doing, man.
yep.
I mean, Garrett, some of the things in your career that you would have loved to have done that you haven't done.
I would have loved to have done Broadway like that. I think. Except I don't like that eight shows a day.
It's a killer, Gary, it's a killer.
Well, Darlene, you got to understand with Gary, it'd be taken away from his drinking time.
We used to do 8 shows a day at the Apollo.
What is that, 5 shows a day?
There was 8 shows on a weekend.
Jesus,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember, and the Brooklyn Fox,
Yeah, at the park. Yeah,
that's Broadway.
that was it.
Then Broadway, yeah. But
You only
you know,
Three
when you
songs.
think of,
But those 3 songs, because you meet yourself coming up and down the stairs.
That's right, no elevator.
but as I had said before, man, that is the schooling that the artists got to take them where you guys are today. Chris, the West Coast was completely different though, because you didn't have big shows like that, like on the East Coast at the Fox Theater where you do 10 different acts and things of that nature.
Well, I did those street theaters, the Howard, all those, doing 5 shows a day.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, all of those shows.
Yeah, not over there.
Yeah.
No,
but at the West
at
Coast,
the Howard, the Apollo, and what was the other one? There was 3 theaters.
Well, the Regal, the Uptown.
Uptown.
yeah, the Uptown in Philly, the Fox in Detroit. Yeah. But on the West Coast,
They didn't have that.
No, they didn't have that.
No.
All they had in LA, the West Coast, was Mexican music.
Some
Hey,
things.
Chris.
And Mexican food.
Well, you had the Roxy, you had the whiskey, but that was it.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the whiskey, man. I remember doing the whiskey for the private party for Bruce for his lighting guy, Mark Brickman. And it was me, Little Richard, they closed the club down, me, Little Richard, Boss Skaggs, man. But that West Coast thing, Dar, are you glad you're on the East Coast now?
You know what? I didn't think I would like it, but now I don't want to go back to California. I'm fine.
No.
I'm fine. No, seriously, I'm fine here. I'm good. I've been here I've been here 35 years. I don't know what happened to the time, Gary.
Yeah. Yeah, you in.
I'm here now. Thanks to Stevie Van Zandt. That's how I actually got here.
Listen, that's what, Gary, we were talking about you with Stevie, and we got to really compliment Stevie because he really appreciates the artistry.
Yes, he does.
That our artists had, what they contributed to music, and he's still trying to keep that alive, and see, that's important. I think, Gary, you'll agree with me. When somebody of today has the notoriety and the success, they should try and bring other people from our world and put them back into because that talent you have, Gary and Darlene and Chris, that's a God-given talent, man. It's like a fine violin. You need someone, you are a violin and you need someone that knows how to play that. And that's what producers are and writers are. I don't know where they are today, but
No.
you know.
Thank God for Stevie. because that album I did with him, it was like heaven being in the studio with Stephen. And you know, Gary,
Yeah.
he is a completely different person in the studio when you're recording.
Yeah.
He's an animal.
Yeah, he is. He's a little crazy.
One outstanding thing, Darlene, in your life that you look back and say, wow, this is the most exciting thing. I didn't believe that this was going to happen.
Well, you don't have to talk about me, Doc.
Okay, all right, all right. You know what? I never thought this little girl who started her career would sing for the first black president of the United States. I mean, I couldn't have never even imagined that.
You sang for Joe
I'll
Biden.
never forget that.
You sang for Joe Biden.
He's black.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I don't want to make a comment on Biden. He might be.
Behave, Gary. Behave.
Well, the most exciting thing, Gary, ever. Tell me about you now, as you look back.
I didn't sing for Joe Biden. I sang for Richard Nixon.
Oh
Now,
my
I
God.
did. I actually did.
Wait, do you wait?
With Richard Nixon. I don't know how I got on that damn tour.
Wait, do you think that Joe Biden would know the song "Quarter to Three"?
He knows every song that was ever recorded. He's older than me.
We got Chris's picture. Chris, you there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. You look. By the way, Chris, you look great.
You look fine.
You do. I'm sorry that you missed the whole thing with me and Gary, but we were talking about you and how important your music has been, not for the Latin world, but for everybody in the world, because music brings people together. And that's what this thing that we do. These artists that you are watching are what America was. A young kid with a passion, a young kid that had an opportunity to do what they wanted to do, make people happy with music. And that's what it's really all about, guys, when you get down to it. And God bless America that we had the capability of being in this country, the freedom to follow a career.
Yes.
And I think you'll agree with that, everybody.
I do.
Right? All
So
right.
what does Chris think about that?
I think
Chris.
it's about who? About who? I don't get it. I stay neutral because I strongly believe in the Lord, and the Lord takes care of everything.
That's for sure.
Yes, sir.
Except for your video.
Well, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
All right. Listen, Dar, you know I love you. I mean, all of these years, going back when I first saw you, I saw the taping with you at the Blossoms with Jack Good. You know, Gary, Jack Good was an English cat. That Shindig originally was out of England. You know?
Yeah.
And, you know, Dar, you didn't know this. Gary, you didn't know this. I was doing a TV show in Philadelphia called the Discophonic TV Scene, which was syndicated in 40 markets. The reason that I went out to the West Coast, Dar, is because Jack Good saw the show. We were on KTLA out in LA. And at that time, Shindig Hullabaloo came in. And the ratings started to drop a little bit. And I flew out because they asked if I would do co-host Shindig. They had Johnny Crawford. Remember that, Dar? The Rifleman, that they had two young hosts.
Yes.
And I didn't want to leave Philadelphia. But that's okay, because 2 years after that, Shindig went off the air.
And
But-
then Hullabaloo came along.
Yeah.
Wait, I just thought of something, Dar, before I leave you. When did you finally tell Phil Spector, hey, I ain't going to be singing for other groups. I want my own song. I want my name.
Well, Well, you know what? That was that today I met the boy I'm gonna marry.
Uh-huh.
It's
And
either
that
me
was it.
or I'm gone. I'll find somewhere else to record. You see, God is so good, you guys, for me. Because of my talent that God gave me. I was so upset, Phil Spector, during that time that I said, you know what? I don't need a record career. I see you.
And
Yeah.
you've been singing ever
That
since,
was
baby. And
right.
you ain't gonna stop. And
No,
Gary, you and I are always going to be together. You know that because you make people happy. That's the secret, man. That's the secret. Know who
Yeah.
you are, know what you got, and do what you do. Don't try to be anybody else
that's
except
right.
yourself. That's show business. And learn from those who
Yeah.
came before you that can teach you. And listen and look, and you learn. Isn't that what it's all about, guys?
That's it.
Amen.
Okay. Hey,
Amen.
Chris. Yo, Chris.
Yep.
You
This is
there?
gone again.
I can hear you.
Okay. But Chris, we're going to hook this up. I know you're in LA. We'll do a chat at another time. And you know what I'm going to
Okay.
do, Dar and Gary? We're going to get Southside Johnny, and we'll get Paul Schaefer, and we'll get some of the guys behind the scenes, and we'll talk about the industry. I think young people who are watching really are enlightened about this. And you know, it's sad that there are no TV shows any longer where we all can get together like a show called The View and talk
Yeah.
about the producers and the writers and the music and the musicians. But we keep it alive. And
It
thank
should
you,
be.
Darlene. Gary, thank you. I love you. And listen, Chris,
Yep.
the Phantom. We know you're there. So we
Okay,
want you to
brother.
know you've got to keep on rocking, Chris, because you only
I'll
do.
keep on rocking.
Keep on rocking. Gary, say, keep on rocking because you only rock once. Go ahead.
You only rock once.
I swear to God. Guys, thank you very much. Love you.
Love you guys.
All right. Bye, Chris.
Pleasure. Nice talking with you guys.
I love you, Chris. Okay. Folks, thank you for being a part of the history of these wonderful artists. They made our lives. The music that they did will always be a part of our lives. The lyric, the rhythm, the storyline, and that's what music is about. Brings people together. And we're going to keep on doing it with all these wonderful artists. Take care. Bye-bye.